Good morning, everybody. Good morning, those of you here physically with us, and those of you joining us online. Welcome to Community Church of Boston, a peace and justice congregation since 1920, 104 years old now. And we light this candle this morning for Aaron Bushnell. We thank Dan Kontoff for bringing this poster. Dan, I don't know where you got it from, but it's really a fitting tribute to the man who took his own life, and as he died, his last words were "Free Palestine," and it's just a sacrifice that we can't imagine, but we remember you, Aaron Bushnell, and we honor you here. Another person I'd like to mention that we haven't said, and we lament his passing, is John Pilger, who it was about 6 weeks ago. John was a wonderful documentary filmmaker and journalist. Several of his amazing films are available on YouTube. We had him once, and we tried to play his film, and we got a strike from YouTube because it was copyrighted material by the guy who was presenting, but that didn't matter. But we remember John Pilger today. I always like to open with some words, and this is from a song I've been practicing, and I'll tell you why after I read or sing the words. I can't decide which to do. Who let the greedy in? Who left the needy out? Who made this salty soup? Tell 'em we're very hungry now for a sweeter fare. Some get the gravy, some get the gristle, some get the marrow bone, and some get nothing, though there's plenty to spare. That's a song called Banquet from Joni Mitchell, and the reason I mentioned Joni Mitchell is this. It's an event coming up here. It's Joni Mitchell Night, organized by this morning's musician, songwriter, Nora Meyer, and myself. Nora has lined up a whole bunch of Berkeley students and alumni to participate in this event, and it's a benefit for Doctors Without Borders, who are doing enormous Gaza relief as best they can, which is really difficult conditions right now. But I hope you will join us for this benefit. It's April 6th. It's a Saturday night, April 6th. And that's how I want to introduce Nora Meyer, who is a new young friend of mine, Berkeley alum, and writes beautiful songs that you can find on YouTube. You should check them out because they're just really wonderful. And Nora gets to play our beautiful piano that we're so proud of. That many wonderful players, top players in the Boston jazz area, classical players have praised, and so did Nora. Nora Meyer, welcome to Community Church of Boston.
Hi, thank you for having me this morning. I'm very excited to be here and thankful to be here.
I see it right beneath us, a hole is in the boat. She wants me to jump overboard to keep our love afloat. What do you say when you can't win? What do you do when you've tried everything to get through? And if I'm really selfish for going it alone, then who is it for if I stay at home? What do you say when you can't win? What do you do when you've tried everything to get through? I overthink the message, I underwrite the risk of losing her to distance as I let go of her hand.
Thank you, Nora. That was beautiful. We'll hear more from Nora. I want to tell you about a few things, goings on at Community Church. First, a couple of remarkable programs coming up. Friday, March 15th, don't miss Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. I'm calling him the new Smedley Butler, who was kind of deep in the thick of the capitalist imperialist belly, and has spoken out so forcefully and eloquently against the war machine. He was Colin Powell's chief of staff at the time of that horrible moment when Colin was given a script to read in front of the United Nations and to justify the Iraq war, weapons of mass destruction, yellow cake, ties to Al-Qaeda. You remember all this stuff, and it was just like a horrible beginning of a chain of events that we are going to suffer from the consequences of as long as we are alive. Then on March 17th, Sunday, next Sunday, beautiful presenter we've had a number of times, a prophetic voice in the world of Palestine and Israel. His name is Mazen Kumsia. He's a scientist, and he's the director of the Palestine Museum of Natural History in Bethlehem. He joins us from Bethlehem. There are two titles. The one that we chose for the newsletter, we hadn't heard his true title, but I love this. It's his little byline at the bottom of his email: "A Bedouin in cyberspace, a villager at home." Mazen Kumsia. You do not want to miss Mazen. The last time he was here, he and his wife Jessie had not been able to do a tour that they wanted to because of visa problems, but they still wanted to do the event. It was 7 p.m. our time, and they were still in Bethlehem, and it was 3 a.m. there. And I was glad to do it. No problem. We'll get up and do that. And here they were at 3 a.m. Mazen Kumsia. A whole bunch of great other musical events, if I can remember them all. April 1st is a Monday night, and it's our annual high holiday April Fool's Day event. And it's a legendary Boston comedian, Jimmy Tingle. And he is at no fee doing a benefit concert or benefit event for us. I hope you can join us on a Monday night, April 1st, completely to benefit Community Church of Boston in our hour of need quandary about our first floor rental space. So April 1st. April 6th, of course, I mentioned the Joni Mitchell night with a bunch of different players. Should be way fun. And then April 19th, something we just booked. His name is Ketu Alawija, and he is a poet lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but he was on death row in Massachusetts until 1971, charged with a crime he did not commit. He has since lived in Indiana and will be on a tour in this area, several events, and we will have him reading poetry and backed up by Willie Sordillo and his ensemble, whose name I don't recall. Willie Sordillo, sax player, good friend of mine from many decades. That's April 19th, and then in May we have Betsy Rose, legendary, again, songwriter from Boston who was about, from even before my generation around here, in the late 70s, what they called the women's movement of songwriters. And Betsy Rose, she lives in San Francisco now and has for maybe 20 years, and will be here on a tour. So join us for that. And then there's May 24th, which is my 70th birthday, and we're doing a benefit concert for Community Church of Boston right here with some friends like Rob Flax and Max Ridley, bass player. A few musical events, few upcoming amazing speakers as well. Let's see. Anything else I need to talk about? I just want to talk about some images that I'm just loving. And the first one, it was designed by our publications manager, Crystal Rollins Jackson, and it's on a sandwich board in front of the church right now. I'm going to just walk towards the camera so you can see it up close. It's such a gift to have a publications and office manager who's also a really gifted artist, not only graphic design, but drawing and quilting, and it's a treasure. Again, Lawrence Wilkerson. Again, I mention this image of Aaron Bushnell. Presente, say I. And finally, it being International Women's Day a couple of days ago, and International Women's Month, I can't help but, I'm going to see her this afternoon, my mom. And this is a piece of artwork done by my niece in California. It's like a Warhol style of Mom, and probably the coolest thing about Mom is she has the most raucous, infectious laugh that you ever heard out of anybody, and this captures this beautifully. She's 97. She lives up in Andover with my brother and sister-in-law, and is not remembering too much and not seeing too much, but still with us and still. Fragile, but pretty healthy, and in such good hands with my brother and sister-in-law, and I will be so eternally grateful to them forever for that really difficult and loving task. I'm going to approach again. Hi, Mom. Her name is Nicole Blank, and she is my niece. Lives in California. And the reason we're going to be able to go visit her is because of unfortunate postponement. We were going to have Adam Ezra here this afternoon at 4:30. He's doing a tour that's called Get Folked. And it's unplugged. Adam is the leader of a really wonderful folk rock band that works really hard, travels hard all over New England and upstate New York and other places beyond that, and just a really celebrated, hardworking musician. He was going to do a show, and he had a back tweak or twitch of some kind that wouldn't allow him to get out of bed this morning. He's in Syracuse, and they're going to drive, but he was so desperate about it that they decided to postpone, and they promised it's a postponement, it's not a cancellation. And Adam his mom is a good friend of mine, Joanne Hamill, wonderful choral director and community leader, and now retired in Watertown. That's Adam's mom. So we send this out to you, Joanne Hamill, as well. Let's have Nora Meyer up for another song. We're so glad you're with us, Nora. Nora also works at Passim, and Nora is about to go on a pretty ambitious tour with another songwriter friend whose name is?
Jess Kerber.
Jess Kerber. The two of them are starting in Nashville and going all through the South and out west. It's pretty ambitious. Nora Meyer.
Thank you. Okay.
The Little League is taking on brand new recruits for after school at Amory Park. They hung up signs and drew chalk lines between every base, and they nailed each one down just in case. Maybe you're not much to look at. You're skinny, you're scrawny, it's true. But the Little League team at Amory Park doesn't care, they don't care, they want you. And Johnny knows just how to throw a pitch you can't hit. He'll teach you if you give him a 10. You can get it right and stay outside till it gets dark, and it's not even hard to make friends. And maybe you're not much to look at, and when you run fast your whole face gets blue. But the Little League team at Amory Park doesn't care, they don't care, they want you. They got shirts way too big and hats way too small, but they'll take you in when they take you out to the bar. Oh, babe.
So nice. Thank you, Nora. It occurs to me that I forgot to announce one of the most amazing concerts that we're hosting. It's March 31st. David Rovics. The tour and the name of the concert is Notes from a Holocaust. And it gives you a little sense of David. It'll be all songs that he just wrote about what's going on in Gaza. And David is somebody we've had numerous times. He's probably played here more than anybody else. And whenever he's anywhere near, we drop everything and host him for a concert. He travels the world constantly, Europe and the Americas. And we're looking forward to hosting David and hearing his take on the tragic events of the last 3 months. Want to tell you also about a peña that happened last night. Peña is a word for peña is a word for peña means a rock in Spanish, but it's also an open mic, Latin American style, and everybody has a chance to speak or sing or read or dance, and they've turned into just beautiful events. Last night we went around and we talked about some woman who's a major voice in our lives. And we had wonderful music, incredible food. Dan Kontoff, also known as the Bagel Man, brought just this huge spread of food from a restaurant that would otherwise have thrown it away. And it was beautiful. I invite you to join us every second Saturday for Latin American style peña. And these are turning into these really international events that have people from a bunch of different countries interested in finding out what they're about. So join us. There's the next one is second Saturday of April, and there's Wednesdays, which we have an open house every Wednesday at noon. We usually serve pupusas, Salvadoran delicacy, and I'm really excited that this Wednesday, among the people we will host are the principal archivists from the Boston Public Library. On Friday, Crystal and Jerry Kaplan and I, and I'll tell you about Jerry as I tell you the story, walked over to the Boston Public Library. We were interested in seeing, which I've never seen before, the original plaster cast of our plaque. Gutzon Borglum did this plaque. He was the same guy that did Mount Rushmore and Stone Mountain in Georgia and other travesties, but this was done soon after Sacco and Vanzetti were executed, and the original plaster cast is at the Boston Public Library. It's in storage, and it will eventually be displayed in a prominent place. But there's also quite a sizable collection of Sacco and Vanzetti primary source materials. But we inherited another trove of stuff from Bob DiTilio, who passed away 2 years ago, and he was not much of a collector, because a collector does it in an orderly fashion and archives everything, and he was a collector / hoarder, but what he had was remarkable, and we have it now. It might have gone in a dumpster, but Jerry Kaplan and I took many trips from Medford to here and brought not only those Sacco and Vanzetti and anarchist materials, but also a treasure trove of books that are mostly up in the third floor. A lot of them are here as well. But we walked over there to the library and we asked in the rare books collection we just were inquiring about the plaque and about the collections, and she said, let me call this other guy. His name was Aaron, and he came out and we talked to him about community church and what we are and what we have here, and our sort of Sacco and Vanzetti in our DNA, all the way back 1920, and he says, well, I'll be in touch with you immediately, and he got in touch with the rare books director, who called 5 minutes later and came over 15 minutes later. You know, it's kind of convenient that we're half a block away, and we showed him our collection, and we're glad to show any of you out there what we have, because Bob's original intent was to have it join the collection that's at the Boston Public Library, and his jaw was on the floor. It was really just incredible to see him as Jerry walked him through what we have there, and they're going to come back next week and with the chief archivist, and they're just totally thrilled, and we were sort of just kind of preparing ourselves for, you know, for having a presentable thing for the Boston Public Library, so they wouldn't, we're not, but they are totally thrilled to have discovered this, and are just really excited to work with us on joining this collection to the collection that's at the Boston Public Library. So that I say that because of Eva's history as an archivist and documentarian across the river there. That's amazing thing to know, because, you know, we're sort of just getting started on this, really getting serious about preserving what we have in this building. We have a tenant that's called the History Project, whose goal is celebrating and archiving and preserving Boston's LGBT history. And they're a remarkable new tenant, and we're hoping that we'll get a lot of archiving juju from their influence. We also have our own archives, 104 years of Boston, Community Church of Boston's history, on the 5th floor in a very disorganized way, and we really want to get serious about finding the right resources and the right individuals and their students, or the right institution to guide us in doing the right thing by an enormous trove of incredible things. 40 years worth of cassettes of speakers at Community Church back when they were in auditoriums. Letters of 40 years of Donald Lothrop with prospective speakers that he connected with. Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Noam Chomsky, Howard Zinn, the list goes on and on. Helen Keller. It's just, it's what really brings me back to this place over and over. And I will shut up and hurry up and introduce Eva Moseley. Eva comes, and I can't help but talk about another program that we had in December. It was Linda Dittmar, of about the same demographic as Eva, who also wrote a memoir that is just one of the most remarkable books, which I would say about this, just from the 20 pages I've read, and it just speaks so much about the beauty of this thing called memory, and urges us all to write. E.O. Wilson, I write every day. I have that on my wall, and I never write every day. And I just thank Eva for putting this collection of memories together for us to enjoy and take heart and take learning and warning from. Is that enough, Eva, for me to have said? Is there anything I missed? If there is, you can talk to us about it. Folks, welcome gladly to our humble stage, Eva Moseley.
Well, that's your copy.
That's my copy.
And
That's
this is my copy, which I may not need, but I'm in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the book is called Skirting History, and I discovered that the root of that word skirting, it's really the verb to skirt is the primary meaning. It means to go around. And the reason a skirt is called a skirt is because it goes around your body. It doesn't, it's not attached to the body. As you get a taste of why I called it that. And there are three themes, but they're kind of, they're there. I don't make a big deal of them during the book. One is absent fathers. One is the effects of public events on private lives. And one is changing Jewishness, and which I think you can guess has something to do with Israel. So I start the story with my maternal grandfather, Zelig Zetlin. He lived in Kursk, Russia, with his wife, Ethel, and 4 children. And in 1904-05, Russia had a war with Japan, and Japan beat the pants off the Russians. Therefore, there were more pogroms than usual because, of course, it was the Jews' fault. And as a result of that, Ethel and 4 children, and Ethel was pregnant with the 5th, moved to Vienna, while Zelig stayed in Kursk because he had a good job as a chemist on the Russian railway.
Eva, would you like the slides up on the screen yet?
Oh, yes, sorry. I forget what the first slide is.
The cover of the book.
Oh, yes, and we need the next one. And this is Ethel Zetlin with 4 children. The oldest brother is missing. And this is probably 10 years later, sometime before the First World War in Vienna. So the 5 Zetlin children grew up without a father. And that included the oldest daughter, Isabella. She's the one on my left, your right. And she was 4 in 1905 when they moved. She became a very talented dressmaker. And in 1928, she married Leopold Steiner, next slide. This is a photo taken on their wedding day, November 14th, 1928. And what interested me about this photo, I hadn't seen it till I was an adult and my parents were dead, is that her sister Vicky is standing between the bride and the groom. And I think that was sort of an omen, a foretaste of their marriage. It's a not usual wedding photo. Their son Paul, my brother, was born 5 months later, which is also not as unusual as people think. So like many Viennese, next slide, most of us were avid hikers, skiers, and otherwise enjoyed the outdoors. This is me. In 1931, My father had Christmas Day off and a few more days too. I appeared toward noon that day. Poldy was the nickname for Leopold. Poldy knew that Isabella was about to give birth, but he had plans to go skiing, so he went. One instance of being an absent father. Next slide. Memories of Vienna and Austria are of much that was beautiful or wonderful. But for Paul and me, there were complications. A major one being living with my aunt and uncle, and Anna, her husband, Beppo, every week from Sunday evening to Saturday afternoon, beginning when I was 3 and Paul not quite 6. And there's a lot about this in the book that I won't go into. It wasn't all bad, but it was confusing for a small child. Why don't they want me at home? That was something like that in my mind. In the book, I also record memories of other aunts and uncles about foods I couldn't bear and some I liked. Anna teaching me to read and write German and Hebrew, the kindergarten in their public apartment building, and continual evidence that Poldy wasn't much of a father. Next slide. So if it's the right slide, he is on the beach on the Danube, throwing Paul into the air. I suspect that Paul didn't really like it. Later, entranced by the movie Pinocchio, I borrowed much later in New York, I borrowed the book from the library. Carlo Collodi's 19th century moralizing was off-putting, and his Pinocchio wasn't cute like Walt Disney's. But I read the book 6 times, surely because, and I didn't realize it at the time, it's the story of a father who risks his own life to find his wayward child. My parents divorced in 1946 when I was 14. Poldy moved away and remarried 2 more times. Zelig Zetlin lived apart from his family for political and economic reasons. The other 2 fathers were absent in different ways and for personal reasons. But I think for children, I'm going to move this. The fact of absence is likely to count more than the reason for it, if they even know the reason or can understand it. So back on March 12, 1938, Hitler's Germany annexed Austria. That was the Anschluss. On November 9th that year, Kristallnacht, Poldy didn't come home from work. Mother told me later that she ran around Vienna for 2 weeks looking for him or for news of him. Then a postcard came from him at Dachau concentration camp, but he was let go after 3 months when Mother got the necessary papers to emigrate. You had to be able to get in somewhere for the Nazis to let you out. So thanks to the rich cousins in New York who rescued us. We packed a large crate. I think you can do the next slide. And even some furniture, including the tall mirror that Mother used for fittings. Paul had to leave his electric train. He showed a neighbor who came to buy it how it worked. She wept and said she couldn't bear to deprive him of it. 60 years later, my Aunt Anna was still contemptuous. He couldn't take it with him. What use were tears? Better to give him some money for it. When he learned that he couldn't take his bicycle, Paul said, "Maybe I don't want to go to America after all." But what he or any of us wanted didn't count. We had an easier trip. This is when we are about to get on the ship in Hamburg. The train to Hamburg, a ship to New York, arriving March 4th, 1939. I have two school memories, one bad, one good, from our first month in New York. One first grade teacher issued a reader, the book with stories and stuff in it. And the next day she demanded that I cover it. Book covers were unknown in Vienna for school books. But Mother found brown paper and wrapped the book as a package. And it occurred to me that maybe you all don't know what those book covers were like, and I have one here, but it's in that bag. Anyway, it's not like a package, it's like a book cover. When the teacher spotted it the next day, she held it up for the class to see, and they all laughed. It was the petty cruelty that allows people to feel superior to an outsider. Of course, trivial cruelty compared to what we had escaped. We moved, and in another school, a Negro classmate, that was the word then, went 2 blocks out of his way to walk me home, his arms slung around my shoulders. I was amazed at how uninhibited he was. Our classmates skipped down the street chanting, "Ronnie has a girlfriend, Eva has a boyfriend," although he wasn't my boyfriend. It suggested that I was accepted and at least tentatively at home after only a short time in New York. In 1942, Camp Midvale in New Jersey became a major part of our lives. We can have the next slide. It belonged to the Nature Friends of America, a transplant from Austria and Germany. Its camps were abandoned farms and combined outdoor recreation, ping pong, folk dancing, and such, with left politics and entertainment, including Paul Robeson, Pete Seeger, and some less famous performers. And cooperation was a big part of it. Members helped to build and run the camp. Low fees and an open-to-all policy were important. Many members were socialists. At first, they swam at a nearby farm that was still a farm. But after an interracial group went to swim and was turned away, the members dammed a stream and built this swimming pool, which is where I learned to swim. They also built a dormitory and a clubhouse. In the 1940s, next slide, Midvale was my childhood paradise. Paul and I were in the kiddie camp, but soon he was too old. The older campers, 12 or 13, helped bring meals from the clubhouse to kiddie camp, riding on the tailgate of an old truck. The driver was a veteran of the Spanish Civil War. This is a farewell picnic lunch of the camp. I don't have any really good pictures of the camp. That was in the 1940s. In the 1950s, the FBI recorded license plate numbers at the camp entrance, and nearby John Birchers and Klan members were also hostile. In the 60s, the clubhouse was set on fire. Some members remembered that the firemen stood watching it burn to the ground. It was a taste of the Cold War, although it was hot where it was burning. Meantime, after a decade of good New York City public schools, including Bronx High School of Science, I thought I was going to be a physicist, but I never was. I went on to Mount Holyoke College, which provided much culture shock and a good education. Next slide. Then there's a chapter called 10,000 Men of Harvard, which some of you will recognize as their football song. There were a lot of men per woman in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, But in the 1950s, I wasn't thinking in feminist terms about why so few women. But why graduate school at all? While writing the memoir, I discovered that Camp Midvale, with its hiking trails, was also the start of a meandering path to my adult life. Next slide. Passing through Harvard, Midvale and my later life were like two mountains linked by one trail. The trail began with a Midvale friend named Dolly. That should be Dolly, yes. It is. In 1950, she and her husband had a party where I met Adam, a pre-med Harvard student. Via Adam, I met Joe, who lived in the same Harvard house, and who got me interested in Hinduism and other mystical traditions. That led to my 2 years at Harvard, studying Sanskrit and taking related courses. Deciding not to become a scholar, I retained an interest in Asian literature, politics, and history, so that my first job after grad school was in the library of the Asia Foundation, called TAF, in San Francisco. The second at the Institute of Pacific Relations, IPR, in New York City. TAF, perhaps a CIA front, and the IPR were politically almost polar opposites. Like the Nature Friends, the IPR was a victim of the Cold War. After years on the swanky East Side, it had a comfortably shabby office in Greenwich Village and a much reduced staff. Senator Pat McCarran and the FBI had accused the IPR of disloyalty and got its tax exemption revoked. I loved working there and learned a lot about Asian history and about writing and editing. In 1958, the IPR held its last international conference in Lahore. A young man with experience in Asia came looking for a job, and as all the senior people were in Pakistan, I answered his questions. One was, "Will you have dinner with me?" To make a short story even shorter, a month later, I, a lefty Jewish former refugee, married a sprout of a largely military family, said to be descended from John Alden. I married him, sure that George Van Horn Moseley III was a black sheep. His great aunt came to New York and treated us to dinner. Jolly and friendly, she explained why she vacationed in Vermont, no longer in New Hampshire. The Jews came and ruined New Hampshire, she told us. Aunt Margaret, Eva is Jewish, George said. Oh, well, of course, she didn't mean me, and she may have claimed to have Jewish friends. 2 years later, General George Van Horn Moseley, George I, came to New York, and George III met him for lunch. When George told him, "I'm Jewish," the general said, "Some of my best friends are Jews." That's the standard line for anti-Semites. General Moseley figured prominently in a book on anti-Semitism in the U.S. Army, and he insisted that to protect good American stock, Jewish refugees should have to agree to be sterilized before leaving for the U.S. We've heard something like that again recently. Next slide. George II, my father-in-law called Van, went to West Point and fought in World War II and Korea. But another vocation was teaching English literature and adding to it. He and his wife, Kay, bought a defunct farm, which they called the farm, in Vermont, and that became George's childhood paradise. There was no electricity at the farm because, this is a story I heard, when the crew came to film the Civil War novel Van was writing, electric poles would spoil the setting. but the novel was never published and maybe never finished. Next slide. As I had the only job at the IPR that would have been right for George, he soon landed a job representing CARE in Macau. CARE stood for Cooperative for American Remittances to Europe, but by 1958, the E stood for everywhere, not just Europe. Portuguese Macau and British Hong Kong were as close to China as U.S. citizens could venture. This slide is actually in Manila. We were there for a couple of weeks to see how a well-run care mission worked. George had lived in China as a child, so was glad to be helping needy Chinese. Next slide. But he was soon frustrated dealing with corrupt welfare workers and complacent Portuguese officials who disapproved of George's humanitarian zeal. I think we missed. Frustrated for other reasons, I took Cantonese lessons, went to market, made curtains, and felt useless. I missed having women friends, and especially work of my own. Eventually, I found a way to be useful. Among Macau's street noises, there was music. The musicians were blind, and they were good. George's assistant, Augusto, helped me round them up and march them to the radio station. I think that's what that is. Next slide. The director of the radio station provided a studio and a sound engineer. Augusto found someone to translate the lyrics and provide some history. I wrote Moses Ash at Folkways Records, brought him tapes and photos, and he produced a record. I sent all the royalties to Augusto to distribute to the blinds, as he called them, keeping some for himself. There are two interesting stories that would take too long, but you can ask me later if you're interested. Fed up with care, George decided to get an MA at Yale. Our daughter Jessica, next slide for Jessica. Oh, that's still the musician, so we need the next slide. There's Jessica with Kay Moseley, her other grandmother. I mean, not my mother, but so Jessica was born in New Haven, and then George wanted a doctorate combining Chinese language and geography, but such an interdisciplinary plan was too radical for Yale then. The Council on Foreign Relations in New York hired George as director of meetings, which involved such speakers as Eisenhower, Nehru, and Tito, lots of heads of state and other big shots. Our son Tom was born in New York. I guess another slide, yes. That's Tom in the grass, I think, right. He was born in 1961. In 1962-63, the children had to share me with Women's Strike for Peace, as we women helped persuade JFK to sign the Partial Test Ban Treaty just a few months before he was assassinated. 3 years at the council were enough for George. He got a one-year fellowship to pursue his interest in national minorities in China, hence his interest in geography. The minorities sort of live around the periphery of China. And so there was a lot of geography involved. He arranged to do his work at Harvard. Even then, we couldn't afford to live in Cambridge, so we settled in Lower Belmont. not Belmont Hill. The next fellowship took us to the outskirts of London. If there's time, I can tell you why our remote corner of Greater London is called Whetstone. Somebody has to ask me.
Please, tell us.
I'll tell you later. I didn't find out till years later anyway. The next fellowship took us to the oh, I just read that. George next got a studentship at St. Anthony's College, Oxford. But before we moved there, we visited Vienna with my mother, her and my first time back. And I don't have any decent photos from Vienna, but it kind of irrelevant anyway. As we left Vienna, I'm wondering about the slides. I can't really see them. What is that slide?
It looks like two children and a gentleman.
A picnic.
A picnic, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, that actually is Oxford, our backyard in Oxford. So that's fine. As we left Vienna, Mother said, "Of course, I never felt at home here." For me, this was a bombshell. Years later, it made me suspect that in marrying Poldi, an assimilated Austrian Jew, Mother hoped to become more at home and more accepted. And so did I by marrying George with his Mayflower and Huguenot ancestors. But it was unconscious, not deliberate, not saying, I'm going to marry, somebody of the ruling class. After a year each in Belmont, London, and Oxford, we had a year in Hong Kong. And there are the kids in Hong Kong with Yip Wai. Her mother cleaned our house. Followed by 2 years in Plainfield, Vermont. Oh, wait a minute. Another slide. Then a trip back to England via Japan and the Soviet Union for another year in Oxford. Next slide. There we are in Red Square. I don't know what it's called now, but that's what it was called. Two things followed by 2 years in Plainfield, where George tried to teach at Goddard College. Two things of possible interest there, an encounter with a native Vermonter and a Cub Scout activity. Again, I need to be asked about those. They take forever. It was almost impossible to teach much at Goddard. So after 2 years, George switched to Tufts, the second of 3 colleges where he pioneered Chinese language and East Asian history, meantime producing 4 books. 8 months later, in April 1971, he left. Why this familiar pattern? Often it's a doctor whose wife sees him through medical school internship and residency. Then he marries someone else. George left when he earned a doctorate and got a tenure-track position at a respectable university, not Goddard College. The reason behind this pattern eluded me until I found an answer in Studs Terkel's book, Working, the interview with press agent Eddie Jaffe. Jaffe told Terkel, it's psychologically important for stars to get rid of people who help them get where they are. The client is the child, and the press agent's the parent. The child has to grow up and leave the nest. It's sort of obvious once it's explained to you. The divorce took almost 3 years and 3 chapters. Early on, in September 1971, I got a job at the Schlesinger Library on the history of women in America. That's what Dean was alluding to, at Radcliffe, as the first ever assistant to the curator of manuscripts. A year later, the curator went off to divinity school, another cliche, and recommended that I take her place. The director agreed. I stumbled on my ideal job, which also gave me a new status, no more faculty wife, and gradually made me a feminist. The mostly unhappy divorce chapters are followed by an even unhappier one about our second cruel April. Oh, I didn't mention our first cruel April, but they were both in, and the cruel April is a reference to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, where he says April is the cruelest month and goes on from there, sort of turning Chaucer on its head. So our second cruel April, 1975, when we learned of George's violent death, almost surely an unsolved murder. Years later, I heard a police official decry the stupidity and destructiveness of the war on drugs. So much police time was diverted to that hopeless endeavor, he said, that other work, such as solving murders, was increasingly neglected. Although I think politics was involved with George's death. After chapters about my parents, aunts, and uncles, the book ends with an afterword in which I tot up some of my lucky skirtings of disaster, report briefly on the causes I focused on in retirement, mainly peace and green burial, and consider the likely effects of exile, the question of possible U.S. decline, which we may be seeing now, major dangers we face in various aspects of Jewishness. I used to be moderately proud to be Jewish, but also, beginning in my youth, was skeptical about some anti-Semitism. Insisting we're God's chosen people, I reasoned, is not a good way to win friends and influence people. Some of you may remember that book title. Apparently you can still buy it. It's almost 100 years old. Our Manhattan neighborhood was heavily Jewish. Some of my New York public schools closed on major Jewish holidays. At Mount Holyoke, Jewish freshmen were paired to room together, and I learned some about how Gentiles lived and thought and ate, and something about Christianity, as we had to attend half the Sunday church services and half the weekday chapels. When Israel was founded, I was entranced by the kibbutz idea. It was sort of, like Camp Midvale, year-round, not yet knowing that many were on stolen land. Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon made me, and not only me, think something was seriously wrong. I joined New Jewish Agenda, a short-lived organization dedicated to equal rights for Palestinians. In 2007, I guess we need the next slide, I joined a Cambridge group visiting Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and Hebron. We learned about Palestinian life under occupation, saw Hebrew graffiti saying death to Arabs, and much else that made clear that Israel feels entitled to all the land between the Jordan River, or maybe the Euphrates, and the Mediterranean for a Jewish state, with as few non-Jews in it as possible. Does anyone know? Is it still that slide? No, go back. I wondered if anybody knows what this is. Yes, you want to tell us briefly?
It's the trash that is thrown from the Jews who live above the Palestinian market.
Yes.
Right.
Say that again into the mics from the Zoomsters.
Right.
In the city of Hebron, which is a Palestinian city in the middle of the West Bank, there are there's a Jewish settlement, and now there are more being built there. And they have taken the Palestinian homes that are on the upper floors above the marketplace, and they throw their trash, their urine, and other things down on the people in the street below. And so they've put this chicken wire up to catch some of the trash that the Jewish settlers throw down on the people in the marketplace.
Right, in self-defense. They even in 2007, they had pretty much taken over the city. Was the main street, but there were only 2 or 3 shops open. I think by now there are none. So we got in 10 days, we got quite a lesson in a certain kind of Jew, anyway. You probably all know pretty well what is happening right now, but here's some more background. My colleagues in Mass Peace Action all agree, Pat was one, that Palestinians should have all the same rights as Jewish Israelis. It's far from the case now. Aside from continuous violence to make life so grim for Palestinians that they leave, Israel has built a wall. That's the next slide. Largely inside Palestinian land. It continues to build settlements in the West Bank and has dozens of discriminatory laws making non-Jews, at best, second-class citizens. In 1939, General Moseley, remember George I, declared that the war now proposed is for the purpose of establishing Jewish hegemony throughout the world. This doesn't sound quite as crazy now as it did then, although it's still not totally clear to me whether the U.S. is the dog and Israel the tail, or vice versa. Anyway, it's a bad combination, those two countries. The Zionist assumption was and is that after 2 millennia, Jews were returning to their homeland. There are serious doubts about this assumption. Professor Shlomo Zand of Tel Aviv University writes that counter to what I learned growing up, Jews have at times actively proselytized, that the Romans didn't expel whole peoples. That's part of the diaspora story. That over the centuries, many Jews married Gentiles, and many Gentiles converted to Judaism. That many, maybe most Jews in what became Palestine stayed put. And when Arabs conquered the area, most converted to Islam. So it's possible, even likely, that some or many Palestinians are descended from ancient Israelites, while some or many modern Jews are not. The English translation of Sand's book is called The Invention of the Jewish People. The idea of a Jewish people is as questionable as the idea of a Christian people or a Buddhist people. Theoretically, that may not matter, but it does matter because the usual story has been and is used to justify not only the establishment of Israel, but its push to settle and claim more and more of the land, violating UN resolutions and displacing more and more Palestinians. The Hamas attack, the October 7th, revived the idea of Jewish victimhood, even though Israel, with its powerful military, its nukes, and the unquestioning backing of U.S. officials, no longer the U.S. public, is hardly a victim. Over the decades, Palestinian casualties of Israeli violence have far outnumbered Israeli casualties, as is happening even more right now. In his book, The Crisis of Zionism, journalist and professor Peter Beinart wrote that many Jews still believe we are all victims, even though in the US we are represented in the arts, sciences, academia, and professions in disproportionately large numbers, as we were in my childhood Vienna. US Jews have been cabinet members, judges, and other prominent and appointed and elected officials. But victimhood is hard to give up. I know the seductiveness of indignation, of feeling wronged, whether or not one really is wronged. Israel should not be immune to criticism. A largely successful effort spearheaded by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IRA, stipulates that some criticism of Israel is or may be anti-Semitism. But as a sovereign country, Israel is open to criticism of its policies and actions, just like all the other countries in the world. On National Public Radio, an Israeli mentioned Palestinians' human rights. An Israeli woman insisted, "They're not human." And a magazine article quoted a rabbi on the West Bank, where there shouldn't be any rabbis. There is something infinitely more holy and unique about Jewish life than non-Jewish life. And apparently people really believe it. We needn't consider either of these extreme views typical, but need to be aware of them as examples of all too common chauvinism and xenophobia. I worry about the future of that land with two peoples, but I also worry about three dangers, any of which could doom the Holy Land along with the rest of the biosphere. All are almost entirely human cause, so we should be able to avert them. But many don't recognize them as dangers or don't acknowledge them at all. So it's hard to be hopeful unless there is a general awakening and an uncharacteristic surge of near-universal cooperation to reverse current trends. And we have to look to young people, I think. The first danger is nuclear weapons, and to a lesser extent, nuclear power. Building power plants surely is not carbon-free, even if the power itself is, and no one has found a safe solution for nuclear waste. The US refuses to sign a no first use agreement and has many weapons ready to go off on too short notice. According to a physicist friend, of the other 8 nuclear powers, only China and India have a stated no first-use policy, and both are on shaky ground. I haven't had time to ask him exactly what he means. Second is global warming, which is, of course, as you all know, is already happening. Surely the oil executives who knew about this danger decades ago should carry out and pay for mitigation, but who will force them to do that? The third danger is overpopulation of humans, and this is, I think, the most controversial. The world's population, which took millennia to grow to 1 billion, has just surpassed 8 billion. We need another slide. The pressure on natural resources keeps increasing, as do various threats to the environment, as does human inequality, as do refugees. My mother's family's lives were skewed by public events, war and pogrom. With population, it's the opposite. Many private decisions and actions influence public events. It's well known that when women have more rights, they have smaller families. But in many countries, including Israel, large families are still favored by many people. Now, a personal note in connection with overpopulation. In the 1980s, I met my aunts, my mother's sisters, in New York, in Manhattan. I noticed how small they had become, and that Vicky had her sneakers on the wrong feet. I told her that, and she said, "No wonder they're not so comfortable today." At 92, I've lost more than 4 inches in height and am daily annoyed by clumsiness and forgetfulness. But there are still doctors trying to lengthen life expectancy to 160. Aside from the earth already being overcrowded, those doctors should make sure we have teeth, eyesight, hearing, strong enough bones to hold us up, and well-functioning hearts, brains, etc., for all or most of that extra time. As a society, we won't take good care of more blind, deaf, floppy, drooling, incontinent, lonely wrecks waiting to die. And we don't want to be those wrecks. Anyway, I don't. Finally, in one of the wisest statements I've seen about Jews, or even about people in general, the Israeli author Eva Yehoshua wrote, quote, "Our having been victims does not accord us any special moral standing. The victim does not become virtuous for having been a victim. Although the Holocaust inflicted a horrible injustice on us, it did not grant us a certificate of everlasting righteousness. To be moral, you must behave ethically. The test for that is daily and constant," that's end quote. Somehow, few of his fellow Israelis have gotten the message. Thank you.
Sure. Eva Moseley, thank you so much for this morning's presentation. It's just so rich and so full. I kept taking notes on my hand about, well, you mentioned Studs Terkel. We have this love-hate of books in this auditorium, in this building. We need to get rid of a ton of books, but I happen to have this full set collection of Studs Terkel's books at home, and I'm going to try to persuade the church to receive all of those books. I've loved his work for so long. Then there was green burial that you mentioned. We had a program recently about green burial. And then there was T.S. Eliot, whose Wasteland was just read last year here in full by the group called the Poets Theater, David Gullett and his compatriots. So there's just so much and so rich and a lot to talk about and ask about. But first, we have Nora once more to join us for one last song, and this is the moment that I tell you that we rely on your generosity to keep this thing going. We are in a temporary blip in the screen financial crisis because of the lack of a tenant on the first floor. This too shall pass, but I just mentioned that to let you know that we do this mostly because of that bread and butter that we have, but because of also our members. It used to be that we had to just break our necks having to raise funds to keep the lights on and keep the staff nourished, and there's some moments where we need to do that, and this is this moment, and that's why we're doing this Jimmy Tingle benefit on April 1st, and this Dean Stevens benefit on May 24th. So there happens to be a basket in the back, and you can put whatever you like. There also happens to be a website that has a donation function, either PayPal or credit card. So that's my little pitch, and let's hear Nora Meyer once more. Thank you, Nora, for being with us, and we wish you very well on that upcoming travels tour.
Thank you.
Nora Meyer.
Thank you, Eva, for sharing your story with us. And thank you all for being here this morning. I'm going to play something with the words because I just wrote it this past week. This is a song I'm trying to figure out what it's about still, but I think it's about being a friend and a witness to someone close to you who's experiencing loss and grief. And it doesn't have a name yet, but I wanted to play it this morning. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for having me. Carmina Burana in a glass of wine. Where do you think we go when we die? I've been saying it for a long, long time. I think the questions are the answers, but I'll go back and forth and back again, lose the thread and get off track, and then laugh until our ribs cave in. We've got time on our side. We've got time on our side. It's humbling when the days fly past, make them perfect, and they still don't last, but it's about as good as moments get when we spend it all outside. It's the long way up the climbing tree, the broken lip, the busted knee, that brings my body back to me. Like I've got time on my side. Like I've got time on my side. I remember when the bad news came in the kitchen. The whole world had changed out the window. It all looked the same, so we went out and walked around, practicing deep breathing to lift a heavy feeling and give us something to believe in. Like there's time on our side. Like there's time on our side. There's still time on our side. We've still got time on our side. You and I.
Thank you, Nora Meyer. Beautiful. I really love your music, Nora. And And I'm really excited about April 6th, where we'll hear lots of Joni Mitchell songs interpreted by the likes of Nora and a bunch of other Berkeley students and alumni, and yours truly as well. And we're hopefully going to work up this song that's called Banquet. It has a pretty complicated piano part. If we can, we'll do that. It's a beautiful song, Banquet by Joni Mitchell. She has so many. Oh, it's just like. And this recent recognition that she's gotten at the Oscar or at the Grammys and at Newport, and us. Imagine that, Eva. You just talked about sort of redefining Judaism, and I just want to open with this little comment and see if we could get you to talk about that more. My wife and I own a rental property in Roslindale. It's a family. He's a cantor in a synagogue in Newton, and I know it's kind of liberal leaning to radical congregation. I don't know much about it, but I went to our house to do a toilet or a sink. I forget what it was, and in front of our house is a Free Palestine lawn sign, and it really just like I had not really. I knew he was, kind of like a liberal lefty guy, but that just moved me in a way that I just can't describe, and I want to talk to him, and I want to attend that congregation when and if I find out if that's the consensus there. Because there's a lot of synagogues in Newton where that is not the consensus, and I'm getting that big time from liberal friends who have blocked me on social media and whatnot. But it really makes me want to find the more amazing and beautiful and ethical and right livelihood parts of Judaism that are so remarkable, moving, and makes me even want to be a convert. Although I'll put two provisos on that. The first is that I know a couple of converts to Judaism who are wicked, rabid Zionist. The other proviso is that I'm just so interested in other religions. The beautiful Muslim man that is now a part of our team here at Community Church, I'd like to find out more, and I'd like to go more in. I was reading a book, an article about Dorothy Day, Catholic worker, and it's just like, people ask me, what religion are you? And I used to say, I'm a Quaker Unitarian Muslim Jutheist, but when I'm in El Salvador, I'm very Catholic because their faith was what got them through the hell, which was the war in the 80s, and I want to honor and respect that. And so I remember my religion teacher in college described religion as the infinite appetites. I add to that the infinite longings, and that's what I wanted to open with, and I just really enormously thankful that you are here with us, and that Linda Dittmar was here with us, and the next one I want to get is named Avi Shlaim. Do you folks know him? He's an Iraqi Jewish professor from England, and his senior wisdom voice from that perspective is just something just amazing to me. Anyway, let's get you back here, Eva, and hear from more people. Or,
So, is somebody else going to call on people?
Let's just fix this. So, are there any questions? Susan?
Well, I thought I'd say a couple of things. Okay. One is that my granddaughter just had her bat mitzvah, and they live in Needham, and it was at a temple, a Reform temple, and my son had said there's probably going to be an Israeli flag, and, prepare me for that eventuality of being in the room with the Israeli flag. Well, there wasn't an Israeli flag. And during the course of the ceremony, the rabbi wished well for the Palestinians, which I thought was just wonderful and unexpected, besides which my granddaughter did fabulously and spoke about not just following other people's directions, but finding out for yourself what you want to pursue and how you want to go. And it was quite something. And the other thing, I just want to say one other thing, is that my Judaism taught me to love thy neighbor as thyself, to do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And that's exactly what the Zionists are not doing. And it's what we all who are not Zionists have to make sure takes place, and struggle and fight and march and call and do everything in our power to make this world a fair and just place for everyone, including Palestinians who are human beings.
Well, I no longer go to too many protests, but I have been going to some now because it's so bad there. There was a big one here outside the library and a march to MIT, I think. And there was a small contingent of Orthodox Jews with the payas and the black everything. And my son was sort of stunned. But that's the Orthodox Jews said Israel was not supposed to be a political thing, but the Messiah was supposed to come and reclaim that place. Anyway, I have little brief for religion as such because it has done probably at least as much damage as not. That's good. But I grew up, and most of my friends who grew up Jewish say the same thing. We grew up believing that Jews believe in justice for everyone. Well, then I took a course on the Old Testament, and it was, very brief, and so we didn't read much. But we read enough to learn what horrible people the ancient Israelites were, always looking for a fight. God told us to wipe out Amalek, and we didn't do it right, so God told us to do it thoroughly this time, and lots of stuff like that, deception and violence. And eventually I decided, and I have not found corroboration from maybe somebody here knows enough about scripture, that the justice strain of Judaism comes from the prophets. And the prophets kept saying, justice shall you do, or whatever, however the wording is, it's not in English. But that the ordinary Jews who were not prophets were doing all this horrible stuff, and they kept doing it, and the prophets kept telling them not to do it, and they kept doing it, just like humans anywhere. and that the Old Testament is actually they were good at observing what's what and how people really are. And so that it is that, these fundamentalists who say, like the current speaker, you want to know my political philosophy, read the Bible. That's my philosophy. Such nonsense. It starts off with two different versions of Genesis. So what are you going to believe? Anyway, that's what I think, and if anybody here really understands Scripture better than I, let me know. But that's my take on it.
Anyone online, Omar, by any chance? And while I'm walking over here, I want to lift up two friends of mine in the audience. One is Susan Eskovitz and one is Pat Westwater-Jong, and just remarkable activism, just tireless. I just hold that up so much. I just admire you so much. I also want to mention that Don Wright is here, who will be joining us in May, doing an event with two others who are here. One is Lee Lee left. No, he is here, and Calvin Airy, so we're just really happy that this event is going to happen in May. And here's the question.
My name is Joe Cavadas, and Eva and I stood out at Copley Square for many, many years against the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. And as the numbers have dwindled down, in fact, this is an interesting story. The community church started that vigil back in 2001. It is astounding to think that with this, three of us still out there on Copley Square on Tuesday at 5 to 6. And Eva stood out with us for many years, and I have to admire Eva on her protest against the Palestinian torture by the Israelis, because, I mean, it was one of these part of the foreign policy that it was really off my radar screen because I was so involved with the Iraq and Afghanistan war. And now I can think about what's happening today is, and unfortunately, there a brighter side of this Israeli genocide of the Palestinians is the young people are out. Finally, the young people are out, coming out, protesting the torture of the Palestinians. And we're hoping that basically that they will continue on with the peace movement, because as the numbers of our generation sort of fade out, someone has to be out there. So this is the part of the Gaza problem that is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, for us, because we're just having problems with the getting numbers of people out just before Gaza, and now it's really coming out to become a massive movement all around the country. And Eva, the book is great. I highly recommend you. I mean, she really covers the peace movement from the 1940s, working with Wilson, Wallace, that socialist in 1948, right up. And you really learn a lot, and I learned a lot, that's for sure. And I want to thank Eva for writing the book, and I want to thank the community church for having Eva, and I want to thank everybody for being here and everybody online, because this is vital to start working for peace. Thank you.
What can I say? Well, I miss those Tuesday 5:30 to 6:30, and then coming over here and hearing. This is where we first heard Scott Ritter, such an unlikely peacenik, but he has turned out to be that. Marine officer, I forget what rank he got to. It's sort of like Wilkerson, who is so wonderful, who they've seen it from the inside and they believed in it and they did it, and then somehow they began to see that there's something wrong with what they've been doing.
So just a couple words about religion, and then a question. So my mother is also Jewish family, and she became Unitarian and lives at a retirement place in Florida. And there's a minister there that she likes, except when they talk about the Old Testament. She hates the Old Testament. She said it's so violent, and she has said to me, is this recorded? All right, right. So she has said that some of the Jewish parts of the Old Testament are just terrible. And taking that forward, I've spent a lot of time in Palestine, and I have been with, I was with a group of evangelical Christians who were visiting the village of Nabi Saleh, where the Tamimi family lives. And they were evangelical Christians who had gotten to know him. We were driving a bus, a Muslim bus driver was driving us back to Jerusalem, and they were asking me some questions about what you believed, and I was trying to explain that. And then the bus driver turned around and said, "Hey, I'm a UU." And there are two Muslim friends of mine in Palestine who've also said, you're Muslim because of what you believe and whatnot. So this is all, it's more fluid than what I grew up thinking. And I was at a meeting with a staffer in a congressperson's office on Thursday, and there's a woman there who said, Jesus was an activist who fought against the Roman occupation. And so these Christians who say that they follow in the steps of Jesus should be also with us against the occupation of the Zionists of the Palestine. And I'm wondering, as things and the more young people come out, and this may be an unfair question, I'm going to ask it anyway, if you have any thoughts, any vision of what might possibly happen that's an improvement of what we've got now. Do you see any, way out would maybe address a process of how to get there? And I don't know if you have any thoughts, but do you have any vision of what it might, of how this might turn out in a way that is better than where we are now?
I'm sorry, I had trouble. And you're talking about Israel and Palestine, or?
Correct. No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Israel and Palestine. Yeah. Although, if you have any thoughts about how it might be better here, because if everybody can open their hearts and minds here, then that would help it be better there too. So either place, and that's maybe an unfair question, but I don't know what goes on in that brilliant mind of yours, and perhaps you have done some thinking and visioning.
Well, that's a tough one. And I don't know whether I got it from my family or just myself, but every time I think, well, we could do this and this would work, then it's yes, but. For instance, I can't remember his name. He was the director of a mental health clinic in Gaza, came and spoke at Christchurch in Cambridge 20-some years ago, I guess. And I went to hear him. And I asked him, he talked about the children, what they're having to live with and what they're growing up with. And I mean, it's sort of a very common for children who have suffered in some way to then dump it on somebody else when they grow up, when they have any power. And he's sort of agreed that he too was worried about that, and I think about that a lot. These children, and what is it, 400 million refugees? I mean, being a refugee, we were lucky. You know, we came to a place at the time was peaceful. There were a lot of other Jews here. There were good schools, and, you know, we didn't suffer the way, I mean, never mind the Holocaust itself, but those who survived this nightmare that Israel is inflicting, what are they going to do to other people, to each other, to themselves? It's really hard to think about. And I don't know of any. There probably are here and there prophet types, you know, people who really understand people with their problems and their fears and so on, and can help on a very local level. But we don't have any. We don't even have an FDR. And FDR wasn't the God that we refugees thought him. For one thing, he didn't let a lot of us in. But, you know, and there were other things too, but the way he treated his wife, for instance. But, you know, in some ways, he was a radical, and he did great things that we haven't seen the likes of, or some survive. But we don't see anybody like that. Now, I don't see anybody like that. And you know, some people believe when the need is real, God will provide. Well, I don't believe there is a God. I mean, one of the Jewish witticisms that I like is a Jew, you know, somebody's talking about being the chosen people, and he says, next time, God, could you choose somebody else? And that's, you know, how can you not feel that way? But of course, nobody's chosen people. We choose ourselves. Anyway, no, I don't have a good answer. I just have hopes that Greta Thunberg and kids like that, they are growing up, they will have some power, some influence, but is it enough? Who knows?
Calvin. Well, I was. Let us see your mouth. Hold it closer.
Yeah.
I've been inspired recently in the last week or so by the election of George Galloway in England in a by-election, and he's been accused of being an anti-Semite, but as he explained, years ago in South Africa, he worked with the ANC with Nelson Mandela, and as he traveled throughout South Africa, living in home here, home there, the people that took him in and drove him from place to place were South African Jews. You know, he couldn't ride in a car with a black person, you know, so it always had to be a white person that he traveled with, and they were all Jewish people. And I think, you know, these are my kind of people, you know, that were taking care of him. And, you know, his prescription for Palestine, Israel, is from the river to the sea, he wants to see all people free. You know, where everybody has a vote, and you know, how you get from here to here, I don't know, but I love listening to this guy talk. Thanks.
Mostly because of his very Scottish accent, which is very distinctive. We have a preferential option for the poor.
Yes, I remember that name, but not very clearly. Did he come here at one point?
Everyone else has been here.
I've never seen his name in any of the archive record. It'd be great to have him.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the name, but I don't know what. You know, I've learned that the longer you live, the more you have to forget.
Amar, shall we invite George Galloway to speak at Community Church? We are getting near the end of our wonderful 2-hour time together. Although when it was Daniel Ellsberg, it was 3 hours. We were so rapt, we couldn't let him stop.
Oh, he probably talked for 2.5.
Yeah, he did. He did.
He's wonderful, but he didn't go on.
Eva Moseley, thank you so much
Okay.
for being with us this morning. Just want to close with an a cappella version of this song in a moment that seems so hopeless, and you know, some of the questions: is there a possible way out of here? This is what I want to share. Tom Pacheco is the author. You gotta have hope when every card seems lost. You gotta have hope when you're double-crossed. You gotta have hope when every flower is dead. You gotta have hope even if it's just a thread. You gotta have hope when every star burns out. You gotta have hope one raindrop breaks the drought. You gotta have hope if you still have one breath. You gotta have hope there is a way out yet. You gotta have hope when the rest lose faith. You gotta have hope when you meet Satan's gate. You gotta have hope when you're terrified and scared. You gotta have hope when it's too much to bear. You gotta have hope through the unending night. You gotta have hope you'll see the faintest light. A whole lot of hope creates amazing things, the most sacred sunrise that you've ever seen. You gotta have hope through the unending night. You gotta have hope you'll see the faintest light. A whole lot of hope creates amazing things, the most sacred sunrise that you've ever seen. And talking about prophets, join us next Sunday for Mazen Kumsia from Bethlehem. And thank you, Nora Meyer, for being with us, and Eva Moseley. And Luis Guzman for preparing a beautiful lunch for us, made up partly of leftovers from last night's wonderful peña that we had here. And we